question arises, how could it be, let's put the cards on the table here. How could it be such a great man, and there's no doubt about it, a great man, of the father, I look at it as the father of Israel, our parents, one of our parents passed away here. It's a terrible tragedy for Am Yisrael. The greatness, I heard from my Rosh Yeshiva, that Rav Ariel, that there has not been somebody as gadol, as great as Rav Ovadia in the last 300 years. It's a pretty big statement. In the last 300 years there hasn't been a gadol like Rav Ovadia Yosef. So we have to ask ourselves a question. It's a painful question to ask. How could it be that Rav Ovadia, who heads the Shas political party, how could it be that they gave a hand, they were instrumental, without them there would have not been the Oslo agreements in 1993, and we would have had 1,600 Jews still here. That's a pretty big question to ask. It's a very serious question. We're not talking about, everyone makes mistakes, but this mistake of Oslo has cost us over 1,600 lives. How could it be? Listen to the answer. The Arizal writes that after the sin of Adam and Eve, Hashem turns the way that the world was supposed to be running when there was Adam and Eve, now changes around. I'm not going to get into how the world was supposed to be run, but we're going to get into the change. And unbelievable, here's the change. Now, when Adam and Eve sinned, so therefore their bodies became polluted. After they sinned, before that their bodies were considered to be holy. They were able to see with their eyes, even though the eyes is a bodily function. They were able to see from one side of the world to the next side of the world. Their body was holy. When they ate, just to understand this, when they ate a lunch in the middle of the winter, a lunch break in the middle of the summer, that lunch was on a higher spiritual level than we are with our soul at the last prayers on the Ilah. It's good you're still sitting here. A simple lunch of every day, a mundane everyday lunch, was greater, a millionfold, than what we experience on our souls during the last part of Yom Kippur. So what happens? After the sin of Adam and Eve, now the body becomes mixed with good and bad. Everyone has good and bad within them. The body is no longer holy and pure, and therefore we need clothing. Right afterwards, they receive clothing. In Hebrew, beged comes from the word trader. Once that Adam and Eve became traders, which means that they did not follow what God asked them to do, they are considered to be traders, and therefore they receive clothes. Because clothes in Hebrew is called beged, which means also could mean being a trader, boged. So now, why do we see in the world, I have a relative who recently married, he's 45, just got married. You know, I guess it takes a while till you wake up. 45 years old, just got married. Now, I look at the invitation, and it says that, like, his last name and his wife's last name. So I said, what's this, your wife's last name and your last name? He says, oh, we're into equality. Everyone's equal. So I took my wife's name, and my wife took my name. So now she's and I'm beautiful. Hey, I like that. Everyone is equal. Kulam shavim. We know that is a bunch of baloney, and not so whatsoever. You know, for some unusual reason, in the sports world, they have the women's track team and the men's track team. I wonder why that is. Why don't we just have one team? Everyone's equal. Why don't we have, instead of a women's league in college, we'll just have one league. Hey, you know what? Instead of my wife giving birth, that's not really equal. I think that I should also be able to give birth. That's not very equal. Of course, we know that's not so. When we look into the world, we see all types of people. Some people, no matter what we do to them, we give them a shot of education, we give them a shot of poetry, they're going to remain who they are. They're kind of like low souls. You have geniuses, and you have middle of the road people. Everyone's different. How is that? The Arizal says an unbelievable thing. It depends where we come from. There are some of us that we've been reincarnated from the part of the head of Adam and Eve which sinned. Every part of the body within Adam and Eve made a sin, except for one part of the body. Does somebody know what that is? Smell. There's one thing, smell. That's why, what do we do after we take out the Shabbat? What do Jews do when they take out Shabbat? They look for spices. They look for some kind of plants which have a good smell to them. Why? Because that is the only part of the body which did not sin with Adam and Eve. So that is still holy. That is a spiritual function. Smelling is a spiritual. The Talmud says, what does the soul enjoy? It enjoys the smell. Smelling enjoys. That's a spiritual attribute. So now, listen closely. If somebody is a reincarnation from a part of the mind of Adam and Eve, that person...
You use the word reincarnation as a word which is related to Avodah Zarah and Hodu, right?
For the people to understand.
Why are we using Anjali? Anjali.
So... that means that person is on a very high level. We're not talking about spiritually necessarily. He might be the most evil person in the world, but he's a genius and is evil. And then we have a person who's from the feet of Adam and Eve. That's the lowest part of the body. Those are people that are low. They are low people. And each part of the body represents whatever part of the body we come from, we are trying to fix. Because the last 5,744 years has been an opportunity for us to fix the sin of Adam and Eve. So we're all here to do the same thing. But where do we start? Where do we start our journey? Some people started from a very comfortable, very high, lofty place. Some from a middle. Some people from a very low. We are in the generation, if you thought about it, what's this generation called? We are in the footsteps of the Messiah. Why do they call it the footsteps? Ikvata de Mishicha. That is the bottom of the foot. And the Arizal explains that the generation before the coming of the Messiah, the souls will be the lowest of lows. All you have to do is turn on the radio. All you have to do is turn on the computer. Turn on your TVs, baby. And you'll see what we're talking about. The world is taking a big dive. Look at the President of America. Guy's a joke. Imagine, let's take a president from 20, 30, 40 years ago. How can you compare it to this idiot? How can you compare? There's no comparison whatsoever. I'm talking about even the Gentiles. Okay? The depths that we've fallen here. And now it's an unbelievable concept. We are called the footsteps of the Messiah because that's where we are. That's where we are a part of the feet of Adam and Eve. This is the last part that has to be fixed. We fix the head. Okay? The head, the shoulders, the center, going down, the heart. The last thing is the bottom of the legs. And we are from that generation. So when you see somebody that's able to pick himself up, that's a great person. Because we're at the bottom. We're at the bottom. Does anybody here know what's going on the bottom of their foot? I doubt it.
That's the part that crushes the snake's head.
When you walk in the field,
I thought this should fit
you
my
walk
head.
on stones, not on pavement. You feel things that you don't feel anyplace else.
That's for sure.
Especially the stones of Israel. I'm serious.
So listen closely here, folks.
Make bad song.
Unbelievable. Arizal goes on to write. I'm going to read it in Hebrew and then we'll translate it to English. Once again, we ask the question. A great man, without any doubt, without any buts. The greatest person in our generation, Rav Yosef. How did he make that mistake? It's a pretty big mistake. Somebody told me, I didn't know, I have to check this out. Somebody told me that he passed away on the Hebrew date of Oslo. I mean, if that is so, just blow me away. I mean, that has to be checked out. Somebody told me that.
What, the Hebrew did when they signed Oslo?
Harav cleared this problem that people say that he was for שתהם ועבור שלום. אחר כך שינה את זה, הרי כל מה שהיה אוטובוס מתפוצצים, שינה, הוא חזר ושק שלום.
That's for sure, but we have to say that the damage has been done. Of course, that he has changed. There's all kinds of quotes that we can quote him. In the past years, there was a change. Okay, but still the damage has been done after that agreement. So listen to hear what we have to say. וכל רמ"ח איברים של נפש רוח נשמה דאדם הראשון דקדושה נתלבשו ברמ"ח איברים של נפש רוח נשמה דאדם בליעל של הקליפה באופן שהנשמה תלויה בעבר גדול וגבוה של קדושה נתלבשה תוך עבר כמוהו ממש בקליפה וזה סוד כל הגדול מחברו יצרו גדול ממנו ועל כן כאשר נכנסת נשמה גדולה בקליפה קשה מאוד להסירה ולהוציאה משם כי הקליפה המלבשת אותה היא כה גדולה וזה שתמצא אנשים גדולים חטאו חטאים גדולים ועצומים כמו ירבעם, אחאב, מנשה וכיוצא והבן זה Take me home, Chotzei Shomron. Folks, really, the Hebrew speakers, I'm glad you're still sitting here. The Arizal, unbelievable. He says the following, that after the sin of Adam and Eve, what happens is that Hashem, God took the body, the limbs, the bones of Adam that were holy, and he brings them to the exact opposite, the same limbs, the same mindset. He brings into them the impurity. Once again, he takes the greatness of Adam and Eve, and he brings them into a body with the tremendous impurity of everything that's the antithesis of holiness. And he puts them together. And that's why there's a principle in Judaism that the bigger the person is, the greater the evil inclination is. And we see it in this picture that the Arizal is showing us. We can understand it. Because this person received such a tremendous part of Adam, such a holy part of the first man, he receives exactly the same dose, but on the other side of impurity, of evil, he receives that, and now a person has to overcome one or the other. And therefore, it is such a difficult thing, the Arizal writes, to take this great person out of the mud that he's in, with this pollution that he's involved in. It is such a hard task because it's so powerful, it's not going to leave. It's not going to be so easy to get it out. And that's why he writes that we see such great people. If we had a question, how could it be a guy like Yeravam ben Nevat? He was a person that was able, he would prove to you that this, what we have in front of us is, he would prove to us in 150 ways that it's pure, and then 5 minutes later, the same Yeravam ben Nevat, he could prove to us that the same thing is in 150 ways, he could prove to us that it's impure. That's how Harif he was. That's what a genius he was. He was able to play both the games. Menashe, Achav, these were great people. Great people. And they did terrible sins. Because it's not easy. Because they have within them, they have this tremendous pollution, impurity. In order to make it a fair game, the greater the person is, the more chance, Torah teaches us, the more chance that evil inclination is greater, and therefore, the more chance that he has to do is to mess up and to do something that is not good. That's why we spoke about it many times, that throughout history, usually, it was the simple people did not know how to read. The simple Jews that were sacrificed their lives for Hashem. The people that were the scholars, the people that were the smart people, they many times found their way out of it. And once again, those are not my words. Those are the words, for example, of Rabbi Yaakov Emden. He writes that in time of the Inquisition, those that stood up were the simple people, were the children, were the people that were not learned, were the women. Those were the people that stood up. So, okay, B'ezrat Hashem, we will continue on our journey next week.